if the things you once thought were safe turned out to be the very monsters lurking in your nightmares? Five Nights at Freddy's isn't just a game. It's a story of dread woven into the fabric of childhood nostalgia. A playground turned into a prison, and animatronics that move when you least expect them. But beyond the jump scares and pixelated horrors lies something much deeper. A tale of guilt, abandonment, and the ghosts that haunt both the living and the dead. As a child, the world is meant to be a place of comfort and familiarity. But in the case of Five Nights at Freddy's, comfort quickly transforms into terror when the very foundations of normality crumble. This is not just a story about surviving haunted animatronics. It's about surviving your own demons. And as we dive into the deep psychological horror behind the game, we'll explore how a simple night shift at a pizzeria can unravel the darkest corners of the human mind. Are you ready to uncover the truth behind Five Nights at Freddy's? The horrifying reality that lurks beneath the surface is just beginning. Let's begin the journey. There is something deeply unsettling about places that were built to make children smile. Arcades, mascots, bright lights, cheap pizza, laughter echoing off plastic walls. These places are supposed to feel safe, frozen in a kind of eternal joy. Five Nights at Freddy's takes that familiar memory and slowly suffocates it, turning nostalgia into something heavy, decaying, and dangerous. At its core, this story is not just about haunted animatronics. It is about abandonment, about adults who fail, systems that collapse, and children left alone in places that were never meant to protect them. It is about silence after closing time, when the laughter fades and only the hum of broken machinery remains. And inside that silence, something waits. Before we descend into the complete psychological analysis of Five Nights at Freddy's, I want to hear from you. Where are you watching from? Leave your country or city in the comments and let me know how far this story has traveled. And tell me, have you ever played Five Nights at Freddy's yourself? Was it your first horror game? Did it stay with you long after the screen went dark? Or is this your first time stepping into Freddy Fazbear's Pizza? If you enjoy deep narrative breakdowns, psychological horror, and stories that turn childhood memories into something unsettling, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps bring these stories to life and allows us to explore the darker side of games that shaped an entire generation. Because Five Nights at Freddy's is not just a franchise. It is a warning disguised as entertainment. A story about what happens when joy is manufactured and empathy is forgotten. So take a seat. The doors are closing. The lights are dimming. And once the night begins, nothing is truly safe anymore. Every story in Five Nights at Freddy's begins with a lie. A comforting one. A lie we all recognize from childhood. That places made for children are safe by default. That bright colors mean joy. That mascots exist only to entertain. That adults are always watching. The horror of this franchise does not start with animatronics moving in the dark. It starts with the moment those assumptions quietly collapse. Freddy Fazbear's Pizza is designed to feel familiar. It echoes real places many of us remember. Birthday parties under flickering lights, sticky floors, cheap pizza, costumed characters performing happiness on a small stage. These locations exist to distract children and reassure parents. They sell the idea of safety through repetition and routine. And Five Nights at Freddy's understands something deeply uncomfortable about that illusion. Safety is often performative. When Oswald is left alone at Jeff's Pizza, the game mirrors a very real childhood fear. Not fear of monsters, but fear of abandonment. His father leaves him with good intentions, trying to keep life together after losing his job, after the town begins to decay. That economic pressure, that quiet despair, bleeds into the environment itself. The pizza place feels old, underfunded, neglected. The kind of place that survives not because it thrives, but because no one has the heart to shut it down. This is where psychological horror takes root. Oswald is used to being alone. He is quiet, withdrawn, labeled strange at school. Loneliness is already part of his identity, but being forgotten, even temporarily, ignites something deeper. Anger, resentment, a desire to be seen. His decision to hide in the ball pit is not reckless curiosity. It is emotional retaliation, a child's attempt to reclaim control in a world that keeps leaving him behind. The ball pit itself is a perfect symbol, supposedly playful, colorful, chaotic. Yet everyone knows it is unsanitary, dangerous, closed off for a reason. It represents childhood spaces that are smiling on the surface and rotten underneath. When Oswald dives into it, he is not just hiding, he is crossing a threshold, and that threshold leads to the past. 1985 is not chosen randomly. It is presented as a golden age, the version of Freddy's that exists in memory, not reality. The place is alive, crowded, joyful. Children laugh. Parents relax. Animatronics perform flawlessly. This is how these places are remembered, not how they truly were. Nostalgia smooths over danger. It erases warning signs. It turns decay into warmth. Oswald is seduced by that illusion. For the first time, he feels included. Mike and Chip welcome him without question. He is not the strange kid here. He belongs. That sense of belonging is intoxicating, especially for a child starved of connection. This is one of the most disturbing aspects of Five Nights at Freddy's. The horror does not immediately repel you. It invites you in. Then it locks the door. The animatronics stand on stage, smiling, performing, eternal. Freddy, Bonnie, Chica. Familiar faces. But Foxy is missing, broken, excused away with casual lies. This detail matters. Something is already wrong, but it is normalized. Broken things are hidden. Problems are not addressed. They are explained away. This mirrors the larger psychological structure of the franchise. Evil is not loud at first. It is managed, covered, ignored. The hide-and-seek game becomes the moment innocence shatters. The lights flicker. The atmosphere shifts. The yellow rabbit appears. This figure is not frightening because of what it does, but because of how it moves. Calm, purposeful, searching. It does not behave like a mascot. It behaves like a predator. Oswald's fear is immediate and instinctual. The mind recognizes danger before logic can process it, and then the truth is revealed. 6 dead children. Silent. Motionless. The yellow rabbit standing among them. This is the psychological core of Five Nights at Freddy's. The realization that horror is not random. It is intentional, systematic, hidden behind costumes and routines designed to earn trust. The animatronic suit becomes a symbol of weaponized innocence, a disguise that allows violence to walk freely among children. Oswald's escape back to the present does not bring relief. It brings escalation. The creature follows him. The moment the yellow rabbit pulls Oswald's father into the ball pit is one of the most devastating in the franchise. It weaponizes a primal fear, the replacement of a parent. What comes back looks like his father, sounds like his father, but feels wrong, empty, off. This taps into a deep psychological terror, the fear that the people we trust most can be taken, replaced, and no one else will notice. Oswald is now trapped in a reality where truth is invisible to everyone but him. This is where the horror becomes deeply personal. No one believes him. Authority fails. Systems fail. Adults dismiss his fear. From the outside, everything appears normal. Inside, Oswald is living with a monster wearing his father's face. The first chapter establishes the central theme of Five Nights at Freddy's. Children are left alone. Adults are absent, distracted, or powerless. Monsters do not need to break in. They are already inside. And once you understand that, the doors of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza never truly close again. The most terrifying moment in Five Nights at Freddy's is not when something attacks. It is when nothing does. When Oswald tries to explain what he saw, what happened to his father, and the world quietly refuses to listen. This is where the horror stops being supernatural and becomes psychological in its purest form, because monsters are easier to fight than disbelief. Oswald knows something is wrong. The man who returned from the ball pit looks like his father, speaks like his father, even moves through the house like his father. But subtle details betray the truth. His voice hesitates. His reactions feel delayed. His presence is hollow. To Oswald, it feels like living with a reflection that does not quite align with the body casting it. This taps into one of the deepest childhood fears, the fear of being the only one who sees the danger. He reaches out for help. He calls emergency services, but the system fails him. He speaks to his mother, but she hears only inconvenience, not fear. From her perspective, everything is normal. The father is home. The house is intact. The child is overreacting. This dismissal cuts deeper than any animatronic ever could. Trauma thrives in silence. Oswald is forced into isolation not by choice, but by necessity. If no one else can see the truth, then survival becomes a solitary act. This is where the game reframes the traditional Five Nights at Freddy's experience. Instead of a security guard trapped in an office, we follow a child trapped in a collapsing reality. The decision to act alone is not bravery. It is desperation. Oswald begins sneaking out of his own home, escaping through windows, attics, basements. The house, once a place of safety, becomes another hostile environment. Every shadow feels like it could move. Every door could hide the imitation wearing his father's face. Home is no longer a refuge. It is a hunting ground. This inversion is central to the psychological horror. When safety structures fail, the mind is forced to mature too quickly. Oswald becomes hypervigilant. He memorizes patterns. He plans escape routes. He learns to survive rather than live. Childhood innocence erodes under constant threat. The return trips to the past become both terrifying and necessary. The ball pit is no longer a hiding place. It is a gateway to truth. Oswald understands that if he wants answers, he must face the place where the horror began. This creates a cruel paradox. The source of trauma is also the only place where resolution might exist. Each night deepens the cycle. In 1985, Oswald finds children trapped in impossible situations. A child fused into an endoskeleton. Another hiding in terror while animatronics patrol nearby. These are not just rescue missions. They are echoes, fragments of unresolved trauma repeating themselves. The past is not static. It is alive, waiting to be confronted. Oswald's promise to help these children reflects something important. Even as his world collapses, empathy survives. This is one of the few threads of light in the franchise. Trauma does not erase compassion, but it does burden it. The yellow rabbit grows more aggressive with each passing night. It stops searching calmly. It hunts. The creature is no longer content with the past. It wants to complete a cycle, replacing victims, wearing faces, maintaining the illusion. This escalation mirrors the psychological effect of unaddressed trauma. What is ignored does not fade. It adapts. It becomes more dangerous. Meanwhile, the present world continues to demand normalcy. Oswald must attend school. He must pretend nothing is wrong. This double life fractures his perception further. Classrooms begin to distort. Classmates appear as endoskeletons. Teachers feel distant and mechanical. The mind, overwhelmed by fear, starts projecting that fear onto everything. Reality itself begins to break down. Bullying compounds the damage. Dylan targets Oswald, reinforcing his isolation. Jet exists as chaos, distraction, a child acting out because no one is listening. And then there is Gabrielle, a quiet reflection of Oswald's own suffering. Her notebook, filled with technical knowledge passed down from her grandfather, becomes a tool for survival. Knowledge becomes armor. This reflects another key psychological theme. Trauma isolates, but shared suffering creates fragile alliances. Oswald is no longer completely alone, even if the world insists he is. Each night, the tasks become more complex. Distracting animatronics, manipulating events across timelines, solving problems that no child should ever face. These mechanics are not just gameplay. They are metaphors for how trauma forces children to become problem solvers far too early. Oswald's hallucinations intensify. The mind, under constant stress, begins to blur memory, fear, and imagination. This is not weakness. It is the brain trying to protect itself by reshaping reality. By the end of this chapter, one truth is undeniable. The real horror of Five Nights at Freddy's is not the animatronics. It is the systematic failure of protection. Parents who cannot see, authorities who do not act, communities that look away. Monsters flourish not because they are powerful, but because they are ignored. Oswald survives not because he is fearless, but because fear is the only thing keeping him alive. And the night is far from over. As Oswald's journey deepens, Five Nights at Freddy's begins to reveal one of its most haunting ideas. The past does not stay buried. It leaks. It repeats. And when ignored long enough, it becomes violent. The game does not treat memory as something passive. Memory is active, hostile, and deeply intertwined with trauma. Every return to 1985 feels heavier than the last. What once looked bright and welcoming now feels staged, like a set built to hide something rotten beneath it. The laughter sounds thinner. The smiles feel rehearsed. The animatronics perform with mechanical perfection, but that perfection only emphasizes how unnatural everything truly is. Oswald begins to understand that the past he is walking through is not a memory preserved, but a crime scene waiting to be acknowledged. This is where the psychological horror shifts from fear to responsibility. Oswald is no longer just trying to survive. He is trying to correct something that should never have happened. The children he rescues are not strangers. They are symbols of unresolved guilt embedded in the walls of Freddy's. Each child trapped in an endoskeleton, cornered by an animatronic, or frozen in terror, represents a moment where adults failed, systems failed, and silence allowed violence to continue. The yellow rabbit embodies this failure perfectly. It does not roar. It does not chase blindly. It plans. It waits. It repeats its actions with ritualistic precision. This repetition is crucial. Trauma, like the rabbit, does not innovate. It reenacts. The same patterns play out over and over until someone breaks them. Oswald's growing ability to navigate both timelines reflects the way trauma forces hyper-awareness. He learns where danger will appear before it does. He anticipates movements. He manipulates the environment to create safety, even temporarily. This mirrors how survivors often develop heightened perception, always scanning for threats, always preparing for the worst. The rescues themselves are acts of defiance. Saving Mike from the kitchen by distracting Chica is not just a puzzle solution. It is Oswald choosing to intervene where others once did not. Capturing a rat in the present to alter events in the past highlights the game's central metaphor. Small actions matter. Tiny disruptions can alter cycles that seem inevitable. Chip's rescue from Bonnie is even more telling. The need to repair a guitar, to restore something broken in order to stop the animatronic, reflects how confronting trauma often requires rebuilding what was damaged. Knowledge from Gabriele's notebook becomes critical. Trauma alone does not save you. Understanding does. Meanwhile, the present grows more unstable. Oswald begins encountering objects tied to his father, items charged with emotional weight. These are not collectibles in the traditional sense. They are anchors, proof that his father was real, that the imitation in the house is a lie. Each object reinforces Oswald's resolve and sharpens his perception. Trauma fragments memory, but emotional significance restores clarity. This is where the game becomes deeply introspective. Memory is not just pain, it is identity. The hallucinations worsen. At school, Oswald sees classmates morph into endoskeletons, faceless, mechanical, hollow. Authority figures blur into background noise. The world feels artificial, like a poorly maintained set. This dissociation is a natural psychological response to prolonged stress. The brain, overwhelmed, begins separating the self from reality to survive. And yet, Oswald continues. The idea of the killer room looms over the narrative like a wound that refuses to heal. A place officially labeled, catalogued, archived. Violence reduced to a file name. This bureaucratic coldness is chilling. It suggests that horror has been known, documented, and still allowed to exist. The room is not hidden because no one knows. It is hidden because acknowledging it would demand action. To reach the truth, Oswald must gather 5 deeply personal items connected to his father. Each one represents a memory rooted in love, sacrifice, and effort. These memories are not just sentimental. They are weapons. The wallet speaks of responsibility. The school photo represents pride. The beach photo holds unity. The factory badge carries shame and resilience. The wedding ring symbolizes commitment. Together, they reconstruct the humanity that the monster tries to imitate. This is the psychological climax of the chapter. The yellow rabbit can mimic appearances, but it cannot replicate memory. It cannot understand emotional continuity. Trauma erases nuance. Love restores it. As Oswald approaches the truth, the past becomes more aggressive. The rabbit senses disruption. It accelerates. It adapts. Trauma resists being confronted. It fights back hardest when exposure is near. By the end of this chapter, Oswald understands something devastating. He is not just fighting a monster. He is fighting repetition itself. Breaking the cycle will require more than bravery. It will require remembrance, confrontation, and refusal to look away. And the cost of failure is not just his father. It is the guarantee that the past will keep killing the present. By this point in Five Nights at Freddy's, Oswald is no longer simply reacting to horror. He is living inside it. Fear stops being an event and becomes an atmosphere, something constant, something that never truly fades, even when nothing is actively happening. This is where the psychological horror tightens its grip, because the game begins to show what prolonged terror does to a developing mind. Oswald's reality fractures under the pressure. The boundaries between past and present blur. The safety of daylight dissolves. School, once just another place of isolation, starts feeling as hostile as the pizzeria at night. Faces distort. Hallways stretch unnaturally. Ordinary sounds trigger panic. His brain, exhausted by constant vigilance, begins to rewrite the world around him. This is not supernatural. This is trauma. The hallucinations intensify because the mind is trying to cope. When Oswald sees classmates as endoskeletons or animatronic silhouettes, it reflects how fear replaces nuance. People become shapes, threats, obstacles. The human details fade. This is a common psychological response in individuals under sustained stress, especially children. The world becomes simplified into safe and unsafe, nothing in between. Sleep offers no relief. Night is where fear thrives in this franchise, not because of darkness alone, but because darkness removes witnesses. When Oswald sneaks out, when he runs through empty streets toward Jeff's Pizza, the town feels dead. Closed stores, broken lights, a community that has already given up. The environment mirrors his emotional state. This is a town in decline, just like his family, just like his sense of stability. Jeff's Pizza itself becomes a liminal space, not quite past, not quite present, not quite real. Each visit feels wrong, as if the building remembers what happened there even if no one else does. This is environmental storytelling at its most effective. Trauma does not need dialogue, it lingers in architecture. The yellow rabbit adapts to Oswald's persistence. It no longer reacts like a hunter guarding territory. It behaves like something aware of being challenged. It learns routes. It appears sooner. It pressures Oswald harder. This escalation reflects a psychological truth. When trauma is confronted, it often intensifies before it dissolves. Fear fights to survive. Oswald's courage is not fearless bravery. It is exhaustion turned into momentum. He keeps moving because stopping would mean being consumed by panic. Each run back to the ball pit is a gamble. Each return to 1985 risks permanent loss, but retreat is no longer an option. Trauma has narrowed his choices. The deeper areas of the pizzeria feel heavier, darker, more deliberate. This is where the truth hides, behind locked doors and restricted rooms. The so-called killer room is not just a physical location. It is a psychological boundary, a place where denial ends. Entering it means acknowledging what everyone else chose to ignore. When Oswald approaches this space, the atmosphere changes completely. Sound dampens. Colors desaturate. The game slows down, forcing the player to sit with discomfort. This pacing is intentional. The mind resists confrontation. Fear escalates when escape routes disappear. Meanwhile, the emotional weight of the 5 memory items begins to matter more than ever. These objects are not magical artifacts. They are emotional anchors. Each one stabilizes Oswald's perception just enough to keep him grounded. Memory becomes resistance. Love becomes clarity. This is a crucial psychological turning point. Trauma isolates, but memory reconnects. By holding on to moments of genuine human connection, Oswald prevents himself from becoming numb. He refuses to let fear erase his capacity to care. The yellow rabbit senses this shift. Its disguise weakens. Its movements become more erratic. The calm predator gives way to something desperate. This creature thrives on secrecy and repetition. Exposure destabilizes it. When Oswald confronts it with memory, with proof of what was taken, the illusion begins to fracture. This mirrors real psychological healing. Trauma survives in silence. It weakens under acknowledgement. The chase sequences in this stage feel different. They are not just about speed or reaction. They are about endurance. How long can Oswald hold on to himself while fear tries to tear him apart? The game stops asking whether he can escape. It asks whether he can remain human while doing so. By the end of this chapter, the narrative reaches a suffocating tension. Oswald stands on the edge of resolution. The truth about his father is no longer abstract. It is tangible. The monster is close. The past and present collide violently. Every choice feels irreversible. This is the psychological cost of survival. When a child is forced to confront horror alone, innocence does not simply disappear. It fractures, reshapes, and hardens into something fragile and sharp. Oswald has crossed a line that no one his age should ever approach. He is no longer hiding. He is no longer running blindly. He is confronting the thing that took his father. And once confrontation begins, the story cannot end quietly. Every horror story promises an ending, but Five Nights at Freddy's understands something far more unsettling. Some horrors do not end, they repeat. They loop through time, through places, through families, until someone finally interrupts them. This chapter is about that interruption. Not through strength, not through weapons, but through memory. Oswald finally reaches the deepest layer of the nightmare. The so-called killer room is not hidden because it is unknown. It is hidden because it is inconvenient. This is where the truth of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza was always meant to stay buried. A room stripped of joy, stripped of color, stripped of excuses. The walls feel closer here. The air feels heavier. It is a space that exists purely for what happened inside it. And here, the truth about his father becomes undeniable. The yellow rabbit appears again, but now it feels different. Its disguise is thinner. Its movements are less controlled. It is no longer just hunting. It is protecting something, or perhaps trying to repeat something it cannot let go of. Trauma does not create new stories. It reenacts old ones, hoping for a different outcome. Oswald finds his father alive, bound, exhausted, barely conscious. This moment is devastating not because it offers hope, but because it reveals how close everything came to repeating itself. Another disappearance. Another child left alone. Another story buried under routine and denial. When Oswald tries to free him, the cycle reacts violently. The rabbit drags his father toward the ball pit, toward the same threshold where everything began. This is symbolic. Trauma always tries to pull victims back into its origin. Back into silence. Back into repetition. The ball pit is no longer playful. It is a mouth, a grave, a gateway designed to erase evidence. Oswald refuses. The struggle that follows is not heroic in a traditional sense. It is chaotic, desperate, clumsy. He dodges, stumbles, reacts on instinct. Fear is no longer paralyzing. It is fuel. This is what survival looks like when innocence has already been lost. Then something changes. A photograph falls to the floor. One of the memory items. A moment frozen in time. A reminder of love, effort, and presence. The rabbit reacts. Not physically at first, but subtly. Its posture stiffens. Its movements hesitate. The disguise falters. This is one of the most important psychological moments in the entire story. The monster cannot process memory. It can imitate voices, faces, routines. It can wear skin, but it cannot understand emotional continuity. It does not grasp what it means to build a life over time. The photograph breaks the illusion not because it is magical, but because it represents something the creature cannot replicate: genuine human connection. Oswald presses forward using every memory he has collected. The wallet, the school photo, the vacation picture, the factory badge, the wedding ring. Each item weakens the creature's hold, not through force but through exposure. Memory dismantles disguise. They return to the present together. Oswald, his father, and the monster. This time, the yellow rabbit does not escape cleanly. The tangled ropes and broken structures of the ball pit trap it. The very mechanism used to hide the past becomes its prison. It thrashes, struggles, suffocates under its own disguise. There is no dramatic scream, no final curse, just violent stillness. The cycle ends not with triumph, but with exhaustion. Oswald pulls his father free. His father survives, but he does not remember everything. Trauma erases detail. He only knows something terrible happened. He only sees his son injured, shaking, older than he should be. Their reunion is quiet, honest, painfully human. The father admits his failures. The pressure, the job loss, the dying town, the weight of trying to keep things together while everything falls apart. This confession matters. It restores balance. Trauma thrives when silence persists. Healing begins when truth is spoken. The family leaves the town. A new beginning, a new place, a chance to rebuild away from decay, away from closed factories and forgotten pizza places. This ending is not perfect. It is fragile, but it is real. And yet, Five Nights at Freddy's refuses to let us rest completely. The final message appears. See you. This is not a threat. It is a reminder. Trauma does not vanish because a monster is defeated. It waits. It echoes. It resurfaces when vigilance fades. The story understands that survival is not a clean break. It is an ongoing process. The cycle is broken, but the scars remain. And that may be the most honest ending the franchise could offer. When the final door closes and the screen fades to black, Five Nights at Freddy's leaves behind more than fear. It leaves a question. What happens to children when the systems meant to protect them fail? And what kind of monsters grow in the silence that follows? This story teaches us that horror is rarely loud at first. It hides in routine, in neglect, in places that look harmless because we want them to be. Freddy Fazbear's Pizza is terrifying, not because animatronics move at night, but because no one was paying attention when they should have been. Evil does not always break in. Sometimes it is invited by complacency. So what does this story teach us? It teaches us that nostalgia can be dangerous when it blinds us to warning signs. It teaches us that trauma repeats when it is ignored. It teaches us that children often see the truth long before adults are willing to believe it. And how does this apply to the real world? It reminds us to listen when someone says something feels wrong, even if it sounds impossible. To understand that fear is often a signal, not an overreaction, and to recognize that silence protects monsters far more effectively than darkness ever could. Now I want to hear from you. What does Five Nights at Freddy's teach you? Which moment stayed with you the longest? Do you see this story as a tale of survival, or a warning that the cycle can always return? Share your experience in the comments. Turn memory into conversation. If you enjoyed this complete psychological analysis, remember to like, subscribe, and tell me where you're watching from. Because when the lights go out and the doors close, the stories we ignore are the ones that come back. See you.